What if the quiet, loving woman who gave up everything for you was secretly one of the wealthiest people on the planet for 7 years? Lily lived a modest life, hiding her billionaire identity for the man she loved. She swapped boardrooms for PTA bake sales, designer couture for clearance aisles, all for a husband who saw her as nothing but a stepping stone. When he abandoned her for someone richer, he thought he was trading up. He had no idea he'd thrown away a diamond for a piece of glass. This is the story of how someone hidden, betrayed, and broken unleashed her true self and came back to burn his world to the ground. To everyone else, Lily Hawthorne seemed painfully ordinary. She lived in a simple craftsman-style house in the quiet Seattle suburb of Windermere, a neighborhood known more for its maple trees than its proximity to power and wealth. Her life moved in gentle rhythms, tending to her herb garden, volunteering at the local library, and cooking elaborate dinners for her husband, Adrian Hawthorne. She drove a well-worn Subaru, clipped coupons, and considered her weekly lavender latte from the cafe Bean and Bloom her biggest indulgence. She was soft-spoken, unassuming, and entirely devoted to the man she had married 7 years ago. Adrian was the center of her world. He was attractive, ambitious, and had a magnetic charm that could win over anyone. He worked as a mid-level marketing strategist at a solid but unspectacular agency in downtown Seattle. To his co-workers, Adrian was a rising star, sharp, motivated, but weighed down by his modest beginnings. He often sighed over drinks with friends, dreaming out loud. "If I just had the capital," he'd mutter into his beer, "I could be running this whole city." What nobody knew, not even Adrian, was that the woman he returned home to each night, the woman who patched his shirts and managed their budget down to the penny, was not Lily Hawthorne, the quiet foster care survivor she claimed to be. She was Lily Moreau, the only heir to the Moreau Holdings empire, a global conglomerate with assets in biotech, green energy, and luxury real estate worth over $180 billion. Lily had met Adrian during her final year at Stanford, where she studied art history under an alias, desperate for a taste of normalcy. Raised under constant watch by tutors, bodyguards, and the brutal pressures of the ultra-rich, her parents, Julianne and Camille Moreau, had been genius-level minds with ice-cold hearts. They died in a yacht explosion when she was 19, leaving her in the custody of her fierce grandmother, Genevieve Moreau. Now the sole inheritor of their empire, Lily felt suffocated by her legacy and the media frenzy that came with it. So she made a plan. A temporary escape. Adrian, a scholarship kid with big dreams, was everything her world wasn't. He was sincere, grounded, and seemed to love her for who she was, not for the family name. When he suggested building a simple life far from the elite, Lily thought it was a dream come true, and with a heavy but hopeful heart, she made a choice. Lily saw it as a romantic dream come to life. She truly believed she had found a man who loved her for who she was, not for her name or her wealth. So, with a heart that was both anxious and hopeful, she made a choice. She transferred her entire fortune into a blind trust, locked behind a complex network of legal safeguards, only accessible by her and her family's longtime attorney, Malcolm Pierce. She told Adrian a fictional story of growing up in a rundown foster system, painted herself as someone with nothing, and stepped fully into her new identity. For 7 years, she lived that life without faltering, completely dedicated, endlessly supportive. She learned to stretch every dollar, to delight in secondhand finds, to smile through the ache of wanting to give him more. There were nights she stared at the ceiling, wondering if he would ever understand what she'd given up, not just her wealth, but the safety of being known, seen, and secure. Yet she stayed, believing that anonymity in love was a price worth paying. She found authentic joy in the simplicity and peace of being anonymous, quietly watching Adrian chase his ambitions. She felt proud of him. She believed she was nurturing his dreams, that what they had was a love built on something deeper than money. But over time, small fractures began to show. Adrian's drive, once a trait she admired, began to turn sour with frustration. He grew weary of their humble life. His remarks became sharper, edged with sarcasm. He'd make little comments about her outdated clothes, their shoestring budget vacations, and her total lack of professional connections. "Did you see the rock on Jason Park's fiancée?" he muttered after one corporate dinner, his eyes sparkling with envy. "Must be at least 10 carats. her dad some telecom tycoon in Seoul. Then he'd glance down at Lily's plain gold wedding band, the one they picked together, and his lips would twitch with a subtle sneer. That ring, once a sacred promise, now felt like a chain around her finger. She began to notice how his compliments grew rare, how his eyes wandered past her to women who shimmered with money and status. He started working late, attending after-hours mixers that left him smelling faintly of perfume Lily had never worn. He was pulling away. His touch became rare, mechanical. The warmth and laughter that once wrapped around their home like a blanket vanished, replaced with cold silence. And then there were the sighs, deep, disappointed exhalations that seemed to echo off every wall. Lily felt it all. She sensed it like a chill in her bones. The dread crept in, heavy and slow. She tried to talk to him, to reach him, but her quiet efforts to connect were brushed off with irritation and defensiveness. "What is there to talk about, Lily?" he barked one evening, flinging his briefcase onto the dining table she had carefully set for dinner. "We're stuck. Going nowhere. I'm drowning, and you're just fine treading water." "I thought we were happy," she whispered, her voice breaking. Her heart stung. "I thought this is what you wanted." "I wanted a partner," Adrian snapped, his voice thick with disdain. "Not a housekeeper. I need someone who can actually help me. Someone with resources." That word, resources, hung in the air between them, sharp and cruel. It was a word that had followed Lily her entire life, one she had tried to escape. And now, it was being hurled back at her by the very man she had given up everything for. She stared at Adrian, the stranger he had become. His face, once familiar, now twisted with a hunger for more, a greed she had never fully seen before. And in that moment, for the first time in 7 years, the ghost of Lily Moreau stirred inside her. What had started as a romantic escape was about to shift into something else entirely, a war, and only she knew the true power she held. The final blow landed on a crisp October evening. The air smelled faintly of wood smoke and fallen leaves. It was their 7th wedding anniversary. Lily had spent the entire day preparing a meal that recreated their very first date. Handmade pasta, a slow-simmered saffron cream sauce, and a bottle of Chianti she had driven across town to find. She wore a simple blue dress, his favorite color, he once said. She had set the table with their nicest china. Candles flickered as she waited, her heart caught between fragile hope and creeping dread. Adrian came home 3 hours late. He didn't even glance at the dinner. His face was flushed with excitement, his eyes alight with a manic energy that didn't belong to the man she'd married. He dropped a thick, cream-colored envelope on the table. It landed next to the untouched bread with a dull thud. "What's this?" Lily asked softly. "That," he said, loosening his tie, a smug smile tugging at his lips, "is the future, my future." Her hands shook as she opened the envelope. Inside were divorce papers. The cold, impersonal legal language was a gut punch against the backdrop of the warm, candlelit dinner. The words blurred before her eyes, but the message was unmistakable. Irreconcilable differences. No fault. A clean break. "I don't understand," she stammered, her voice cracking as she looked up at him. "It's our anniversary." "Oh, Lily, come on," he scoffed, waving her off with a careless flick of his hand. "Don't be so naive." "Did you really think this was working?" he continued. "This small, pointless life? I'm meant for more, and I've been given a real opportunity. I can't let you hold me back." Her eyes dropped to the legal documents again. The name listed as petitioner jumped out, someone she had heard him mention more and more lately, always with admiration. Genevieve Langford, heiress to the Langford investment dynasty, a woman regularly featured in the glossy society columns, always draped in couture and dripping in jewels. A woman of resources. Suddenly, everything made sense. The late nights, the hushed calls, the unfamiliar perfume, floral, sharp, not hers, clinging to his shirts. He hadn't just drifted away. He had replaced her. "You're leaving me for her?" Lily's voice was barely above a whisper. The pain was more than emotional. It was a physical stab, like a shard of ice sinking deep into her chest. "Leaving you implies we were ever equals," Adrian said, his tone cold and unrelenting. He began to pace the small living room, his stride suddenly too large for the space that had once felt like home. "Genevieve gets it. She understands drive, understands what it means to want more." Her father, Charles Langford, was prepared to make Adrian a senior partner in his new private equity firm. This is it, Lily. The real game, where I belong. He finally stopped and looked her over. His eyes swept across her simple blue dress and tear-stained face with something close to pity, but not quite. There was no empathy in him, just cold calculation, as if he were appraising damaged goods. The way his gaze moved, dismissive, bored, cut deeper than any insult. Look, I'll be reasonable. The house is still under mortgage, but there's a bit of equity. You can take it. He shrugged. You can have the car, too. Should be plenty for someone with modest tastes. Think of it as a severance package for 7 years of service. 7 years of service. Not love, not partnership, service. The word echoed like a gunshot in the silence that followed. To him, she was a staff member, a line item, an asset to be written off. Her sacrifices weren't invisible, they were irrelevant. The home-cooked meals, the nights spent poring over his resume, the pep talks when he doubted himself. He had tallied none of it. In his mind, she had been a placeholder, a warm body keeping a seat until someone better arrived. The laughter, the shared meals, the dreams she had built around him, all of it had been reduced to an itemized goodbye. He wasn't just breaking her heart. He was wiping out her existence, every sacrifice, every moment of self-erasure. It meant nothing. I gave you everything, she whispered, her voice cracking under the weight of the moment, the tears she refused to let fall still clinging to her throat. Adrian let out a short, sharp laugh, void of humor, full of disdain. You gave me nothing, Lily. He shook his head like he pitied her stupidity. You were nothing. That's the problem. He picked up his briefcase. Not the weathered brown leather one she'd surprised him with 5 years ago. No, this one was sleek, silver, expensive, one she'd never seen before. Clearly a gift from Genevieve. He paused at the door, looking back one final time. I hope you find yourself a nice, quiet little life, he said, his voice wrapped in smug faux kindness. Maybe you can work at that library you're so fond of. Honestly, it suits you. Just sign the papers, Adrian had said. It's better for everyone. If we do this quickly and quietly. The door clicked shut behind him, the sound final, echoing through the stillness. Lily was left alone in the flickering candlelight. The scent of the saffron cream sauce she had poured her heart into preparing now turned her stomach. The once beautiful meal was no longer romantic. It was a monument to her own naivety. He thought he was walking away from a penniless orphan. He believed he was casting off dead weight to ascend into the elite circles he so desperately craved, but he had no idea what he had just set in motion. In that moment, as the last embers of her love for him flickered out, something else ignited. The pain was still there, sharp and gaping, but under it something colder began to stir, something harder, something unfamiliar. It was rage, a Moreau-sized rage. She looked down at the divorce papers on the dining table, legal proof of her humiliation. Quietly and quickly, he'd said. Lily reached for her phone, her hand unsettlingly steady. She scrolled through her contacts, past the gardener, the mechanic, the old yoga studio she never went back to, until she landed on a name she hadn't touched in 7 years. 2 words glowed from the screen. Malcolm Pierce. Her thumb hovered over the call button. The woman who made this call would not be the devastated wife in the soft blue dress. She would be the hidden heiress, the billionaire Adrian never even knew existed. The game was done. The war was about to begin. The first 24 hours after Adrian left passed in a haze of stunned silence. Lily didn't cry. The hurt was too deep for tears. There was only a hollow, aching cavern where her heart had once lived. She moved through the house like a ghost. Her home, once filled with warmth, now felt like a mausoleum of shared lies. Every item screamed of betrayal. The chipped mug he sipped coffee from every morning. The armchair he used to curl up in with a book. The framed photographs of a smiling couple who never truly existed. With a black trash bag in hand, Lily moved through the house with chilling precision. She swept every photo, every card, every gift he had ever given her into it. Not for closure. Not for healing. It was an exorcism. By sunrise, the house was stripped of every trace of him, emptied, like her. Only then did she face the mirror. The woman staring back was a stranger. Her eyes, once soft and full of light, were shadowed and unreadable. Her hair was pulled back into a lazy ponytail. She wore one of Adrian's old faded t-shirts like a nightgown. This was the woman he had cast aside, the meek, modest, supposedly penniless orphan. He had broken her. but he had also forged her. He had unknowingly built the version of her that would now rise. And now, it was time for Lily Moreau to come home. She stepped into the shower, letting the scalding water jolt her back into herself. It burned away the numbness. Each droplet against her skin was like a slap, an awakening. She didn't flinch. She welcomed the sting. It felt real. More real than anything she'd felt in weeks. She dressed, not in her typical low-key attire, but in the one emergency outfit she had stashed deep in her closet years ago. Black tailored trousers, a crisp silk blouse, and understated yet refined leather flats. Remnants of a life she had tried to bury. A contingency plan she had once hoped she'd never need. The moment the fabric touched her skin, it was like a second identity sliding back into place. A quiet shift from invisible to invincible. Then she made the call. The phone rang only once. Malcolm Pierce speaking. Came the familiar voice, calm, precise, and utterly composed. "Malcolm," she said. Her own voice felt foreign in her throat, dry, unrecognizable. "It's me." There was a pause, a long breath on the other end, thick with disbelief. Malcolm Pierce, the silver-haired, sharply dressed legal mind who had been her father's most trusted advisor and the unwavering steward of the Moreau family's legacy for over 3 decades. In many ways, he had been more of a father to her than her own ever was. "Lily," he finally said, her name carrying a gravity that struck deep, a cocktail of shock, relief, and deep, quiet concern. "My dear girl, are you safe?" "No," she said simply. That one word carried everything. "But I will be." She inhaled slowly. The air in the quiet, colorless house felt electric now. It crackled with tension, something old waking up in her chest, something sharp and sure and unrelenting. The version of herself she had suppressed was beginning to stretch, to rise. "Malcolm, I'm coming back. I want you to initiate Protocol Alpha immediately." Protocol Alpha. The code word they had agreed on long ago, the legal trigger to dissolve the blind trust and fully reinstate her identity, her access, her power. The final fail-safe. "Understood," Malcolm replied, his voice instantly shifting from protective figure to shrewd executor. "A car will be at your door in 1 hour. We've secured the penthouse at the Mandarin Oriental in New York. Your security team is already being deployed. What are your immediate instructions?" She looked around the space she had once called home. The beige walls, the cramped kitchen, the life she'd built on a lie. "The house," she said coolly. "Sell it. Donate everything inside to charity. I don't want a single trace of this life to follow me." Her gaze fell to the divorce papers still lying on the table. "And Malcolm," she added, her voice tightening, "I want everything you can dig up on a man named Charles Langford and his private equity operations. I want a full file on his daughter Genevieve and my husband Adrian Hawthorne." "I already have a preliminary file on the Langfords," Malcolm said, his tone low and serious. "Charles has been trying to undermine Moreau Shipping's dominance for years. This isn't coincidence, Lily. It appears your husband was poached." Poached. The cold, clinical business term stung in a way no emotional betrayal ever could. She hadn't just been left, she had been tactically removed. "Understood," she said, her voice sharpening. "One more thing, Malcolm. The divorce papers? Don't let Adrian's attorney file them. You'll be handling the proceedings." "With pleasure," Malcolm replied, his voice now edged with steel. "We'll file under grounds of adultery and fraud. His petition will be buried. He won't even see it coming." 1 hour later, a sleek black Rolls-Royce Phantom glided to a stop outside her house. It looked so wildly out of place in this denim-wrapped neighborhood. It might as well have landed from space. A sharply dressed man stepped out and opened the door, her new head of security. Lily slid into the plush leather interior. She cast one final look at the house, the quiet, forgettable street, the life that had become nothing more than a haunting memory. She didn't look back again. The car moved silently through the streets, heading toward a private airfield where the Moreau jet waited. Her phone, a top-of-the-line satellite model now part of her secure comms, buzzed to life. A single encrypted message from Malcolm had arrived. Attached was one file, the Moreau Holdings summary. Line after line of coded data, obscure subsidiary names, market valuations in the billions. At the bottom of the report, a final number stood stark against the screen. $217.4 billion. She didn't smile. She didn't blink. She stared at it with the kind of focus that turned numbers into weapons. Adrian had left her for a woman with resources. He had ridiculed her for having nothing. He had built his ambition on the illusion of her scarcity. Now he would learn. He didn't just lose her, he had never even understood who she was. The penniless orphan was gone. Lily Moreau, the billionaire titan he never knew, had risen from the ruins, and she was coming to collect a 7-year debt of betrayal and humiliation with interest. The transformation from Lily Hawthorne, the suburban wife, to Lily Moreau, the commanding CEO, was swift and complete. It began the moment she stepped off the jet onto the tarmac at Teterboro Airport and inhaled the rarefied air of the life she once walked away from. The penthouse at the Mandarin Oriental, with its sweeping view of Central Park, became her cocoon. It was a world of quiet luxury, sharp-dressed staff who moved like whispers, and floor-to-ceiling windows that glowed with Manhattan's power. The silence buzzed with command, the calm with control. Malcolm Pierce was waiting, standing beside a polished mahogany table covered in documents and tablets. He looked older than she remembered, but the sharp clarity in his eyes remained unchanged. Unwavering loyalty, piercing intelligence. He didn't reach to hug her or offer comforting words. Instead, Malcolm simply gave a respectful, subtle nod. "Welcome back, Miss Moreau." The title, unused for so long, settled over her like a perfectly tailored coat. "It's good to be back, Malcolm." The next few days blurred into a whirlwind of high-level briefings and confidential strategy sessions. Lily was a quick study. Her mind, dormant too long on the trivial details of domestic life, snapped back into action. Sharp, precise, just like her father's had been. She tore through 7 years of corporate shifts, market disruptions, and emerging technologies with relentless hunger. Each meeting, each report she absorbed, wasn't just data, it was fuel. The embers inside her, long buried beneath years of self-denial, now roared back to life. She found herself working late into the night, eyes burning from screen glare but mind clear and alive. She wasn't catching up, she was preparing for war. And alongside the mental resurgence, a physical transformation took shape. The modest, invisible woman from Windermere was methodically dismantled. In her place, a new version emerged, constructed with clinical precision. New York's most elite stylists, trainers, and wellness experts descended upon the penthouse. She allowed them to sculpt her image without protest, watching in the mirror not with vanity, but calculation. This wasn't about beauty. It was about presence. She would walk into every room and never be overlooked again. Her once long, unstyled hair was cut into a sleek, razor-sharp bob that sculpted her face and emphasized her aristocratic cheekbones. Her wardrobe, once filled with faded jeans and soft cotton pullovers, was replaced by custom-tailored Tom Ford power suits, sculpted Dior dresses, and dangerously sharp Louboutin stilettos. This wasn't fashion. It was armor. Each piece was designed to signal dominance, to project elegance so cold and flawless it could cut through glass. She could see the shift in the eyes of those around her. Guards standing straighter, assistants speaking more carefully. Her silence now spoke louder than their noise. She walked differently now, spine straight, shoulders square, every step purposeful. Her voice, once soft and hesitant, now carried precision and weight. It left no room for debate. Within a week, she was ready. Her return would not be a whisper, it would be a reckoning. Malcolm had arranged an emergency summit with the Moreau Holdings Board of Directors, a cadre of powerful, aging men who had grown used to running things during her absence, operating under Malcolm's stewardship, but without a true Moreau at the head of the table. She entered the 80th floor boardroom in the Moreau skyscraper like a strike of lightning. The sharp click of her heels on the marble floor echoed across the cavernous space. Conversations halted mid-sentence. 12 board members, captains of global finance and industry, stared at her in stunned silence. They remembered a grieving girl with hollow eyes and shaking hands. They were not prepared for the woman who stood before them now. "Good morning, gentlemen," Lily said, her voice calm and controlled as she took her place at the head of the long table, her father's seat. "I apologize for my extended absence. I was otherwise engaged." She didn't wait for polite acknowledgments. She dove in. What followed was a masterclass in command, a relentless, razor-sharp breakdown of Moreau Holdings' recent operations, missed opportunities, bloated departments, and an innovation pipeline that had grown sluggish under passive leadership. She didn't just critique, she led. She presented a sweeping, bold vision for the future of Moreau Holdings, one rooted in a massive shift toward sustainable energy and a calculated acquisition of a pioneering AI firm already gaining traction in defense and logistics. Every man in the room sat up straighter. The sluggish complacency that had hung in the boardroom like a stale fog was gone, replaced with a tense, electric energy. They listened, they followed, and they feared her, just enough to respect her. But beneath the sweeping corporate strategy, there was something else, something more personal. A target. Now, she said, her gaze sliding coolly across the table, I've reviewed Rothschild Capital's latest activity. Their efforts to undercut our shipping infrastructure are sloppy, but persistent. She tapped the digital controller. A new file appeared on the massive screen at the front of the room. It was a mid-size, rapidly growing logistics firm named NextLogix. They've developed a predictive shipping algorithm that could disrupt the entire global chain, she explained. Rothschild has been circling them for 6 months. Their current offer is stalled at $900 million. She paused, letting the weight of her next words settle in the silence. This morning, she continued, a hint of steel laced with satisfaction in her voice, Moreau Holdings submitted a competing bid, $1.5 billion, all cash. The deal will close by Friday. A ripple of murmurs spread through the boardroom, shock, then awe. It was bold, maybe even audacious, but it was also deliberate, a clear, public strike against Charles Langford. And she wasn't finished. Additionally, Lily said, her voice cooling further, I've reviewed Charles Langford's new private equity venture. It's little more than a vanity project, one built for his daughter and her new associate. She let the term hang in the air like a slow-burning fuse. They appear to be focusing early investments on the luxury hospitality market. With a tap, she brought up another slide, this one a breakdown of boutique hotel properties under preliminary acquisition. We'll begin a systematic sweep of every market they're targeting. We'll outbid them, we'll absorb every asset in their pipeline, and we'll drain their capital before they even close their first deal. Her voice was steady, calculated. I want their venture stillborn. Is that clear? The board, once skeptical, now stared at her with something approaching awe, and something else beneath it, fear. This wasn't Julian Moreau's grieving daughter. This was a predator. As the boardroom emptied, Malcolm lingered. A bold return, Lily, he said, a flicker of admiration in his eyes. You reminded them who's in command. I wasn't talking to them, Malcolm, she replied quietly, turning to the towering window behind her, where the city sprawled beneath in steel and stone. I was talking to him. She knew the news of the NextLogix acquisition would ripple through the financial world like a detonation. Charles Langford would be livid. And Adrian, so proud of his new career, his glittering life, would be standing directly in the blast zone. He wanted the big leagues? She had just rewritten the rulebook, and he didn't even know she was on the field. 2 months passed. Adrian Hawthorne was living the dream, his dream. He and Genevieve Langford had become one of New York's most visible couples. Their Park Avenue penthouse, a wedding gift from her father, was the envy of society pages. He now held the title of Senior Vice President at Langford Private Equity. His office overlooked Midtown Manhattan, and his closet was filled with bespoke Italian suits. He had arrived. At least, that's what he thought. But beneath the gloss, cracks were forming. Their debut venture, a luxury hotel acquisition fund, was unraveling. Every boutique property they set their sights on, every deal they began, was ripped away at the 11th hour. Each time by an unnamed rival with deeper pockets and faster lawyers. The whispers on Wall Street pointed to a newly aggressive Moreau Holdings. But the pattern, the precision, it felt too deliberate, too personal. Charles Langford was livid. We're being haunted, he barked across the boardroom, slamming a file onto the conference table. Someone's toying with us, and you, with your Ivy League credentials and your vision, can't figure out who. Adrian sat silent, the sting of humiliation sharp behind his polished facade. Tonight, however, was supposed to be different. A break from the pressure, a celebration of success. It was the annual Starlight Gala at the Metropolitan Museum of Art, the pinnacle of high society. The Starlight Gala was the crown jewel of New York's social season. For Adrian, it marked his true arrival. He stood proudly beside Genevieve, her neck glittering with Langford diamonds, soaking in the camera flashes and the sycophantic praise of Manhattan's most powerful. It was validation. Proof he had climbed out of mediocrity into magnificence. This was where he belonged. For the briefest moment, his mind flicked back to Lily. He imagined her sitting alone in that dull little house in Windermere, watching some budget streaming show, completely unaware of the opulence he now bathed in. The thought made him smirk. He had made the right choice. Then the grand doors to the Temple of Dender exhibit swung open. The crowd hushed in unison. Conversations died mid-sentence. The air shifted, and then the sea of couture and celebrity faces parted. She appeared. She wore a midnight blue silk gown that clung to her body like water, fluid, elegant, dangerous. Around her neck rested a single breathtaking diamond, the legendary Moreau star, catching every flicker of light and scattering it in 1,000 directions. Her black hair was sculpted into a sleek, flawless bob. Her eyes, cool, razor-sharp, scanned the room, missing nothing. She walked with poise, flanked by two men, Malcolm Pierce, stoic and commanding, and Kaido Tanaka, the enigmatic CEO of a rival tech empire. A man whose public appearances were as rare as eclipses. Her presence distorted the room's gravity. Conversations stalled, heads turned, silence stretched. Adrian's champagne glass slipped from his fingers and exploded on the marble. His blood turned to ice. The face was familiar, but the woman, unrecognizable, unreal. It was Lily, and yet, it wasn't. This wasn't the soft-spoken wife he'd dismissed. It was as if she'd been reborn, as some avenging force cloaked in silk and power. "Who is that?" Genevieve hissed beside him, her voice tight with jealousy and curiosity. "I've never seen her before." A red-faced banker nearby, one who had been gushing over them moments earlier, let out a nervous laugh. "You've been out of the loop too long, Genevieve. That's not just anyone." He adjusted his collar and lowered his voice. "Reverent. That's Lily Moreau." The name hit Adrian like a wrecking ball. Moreau Holdings. The ghost in the market who had been dismantling his career piece by piece. No, it couldn't be. It had to be a mistake, a cruel joke, a bad dream. "Moreau?" Genevieve echoed, her perfectly shaped brows shooting up. "Lily Moreau? I thought she was a recluse," she added, stunned. "A ghost." "Well," the banker murmured, his eyes glued to the approaching trio, "the ghost is back. And rumor has it, she and Kaido Tanaka are working on a merger." "Can you imagine Moreau Holdings and Tanaka Industries teaming up?" the banker muttered, voice hushed and reverent. "They could practically buy God." Adrian felt the blood drain from his face. His carefully constructed world began to tilt, sickeningly, on its axis. The failed hotel acquisitions, the next Logix deal, the strangely surgical precision of the market attacks on Langford Capital. All of it. Her. Across the room, as if sensing the panic radiating from him, Lily's eyes met his. No flicker of recognition, no emotion, no hint of their shared past. Her gaze passed over him with the clinical detachment one might reserve for a plastic chair or an insect on the windowsill. And it shattered him. She wasn't angry, she wasn't vindictive. She simply didn't care. That indifference gutted him more than any tearful confrontation ever could. It told him, in no uncertain terms, that he was nothing. In that moment, he realized the true cost of his betrayal. Not just the collapse of a relationship, but the erasure of significance. He had become a ghost in a story she no longer acknowledged, a footnote in a life that had rewritten itself without him. Lily moved through the room like a force of gravity. With Malcolm on one side and Kaido Tanaka on the other, she drew the attention of everyone Adrian had spent years trying to impress. And they were scrambling to reach her. Even Charles Langford, Genevieve's iron-willed father, approached with a tense, overly polite smile. "Miss Moreau," he said, voice thick with forced warmth. "A pleasure to finally meet you. I'm Charles Langford." Lily extended a perfectly gloved hand. "Mr. Langford," she replied smoothly, "I've been following your recent market challenges. Deeply unfortunate." Her tone was silk, but the words cut like acid. Charles's smile faltered. His jaw clenched. "Yes, well," he said stiffly, "there seems to be a rather aggressive new player on the field." "Aggression," Lily said, turning slightly to face Kaido, "is just another word for efficiency." And just like that, she dismissed Charles Langford with a glance, as though he were an underperforming junior associate. Genevieve watched the scene unfold, her expression locked in icy fury and growing humiliation. Her grip on her clutch tightened. Her perfectly sculpted facade cracked, not visibly, but inwardly, as her eyes darted back and forth, piecing together a narrative she had never been meant to know. Then she turned to Adrian, her voice a razor-edged whisper. "You know her," she spat. "How do you know Lily Moreau?" Adrian's mouth opened. Nothing came out. His throat was dry, his brain a whirlwind of panic. Genevieve's eyes narrowed, shifting rapidly from his ashen face to the commanding figure across the room, and back again. Realization bloomed. "Oh my God," she breathed, her face blanched. "She's your ex-wife? The poor little orphan from Windermere? The one you—" She didn't even finish the sentence. Adrian could only nod, one short, trembling movement. The pride he had felt just moments ago, the smuggle of status, had curdled into absolute dread. He hadn't just walked away from a modest suburban wife, he had divorced a Moreau. He had betrayed, humiliated, and discarded the single most powerful woman in the room. He thought he was climbing, but in truth, Adrian had jumped blindly off a cliff, and only now was he beginning to grasp just how far he had to fall. In the weeks that followed the gala, his world began to collapse at dizzying speed. The name Moreau became a curse within the halls of Langford Capital. Charles Langford, publicly embarrassed and privately seething, treated Adrian with undisguised contempt. Genevieve, once enamored, now regarded him with icy disdain. Their relationship withered, reduced to bitter, whispered arguments echoing through their cavernous, joyless penthouse. The invitations vanished. The colleagues who had once praised him now refused to meet his eyes. He had become a pariah, a cautionary tale in bespoke suits. Lily, meanwhile, had ascended beyond his reach. She wasn't simply back, she was everywhere. Her name dominated headlines. Her merger with Tanaka Industries was being hailed as the most significant corporate alliance in a generation, forming a conglomerate that eclipsed every competitor. Every move she made was sharp, strategic, lethal. And Adrian? He could only watch. But amid the domination and precision of her rise, Lily began to feel hollow. Yes, vengeance had brought a flicker of satisfaction, but it was fleeting. In dismantling Adrian's world, she hadn't quite repaired her own. The penthouse no longer felt like power. It felt like a gilded cage. On a rainy Tuesday afternoon, restless and craving something unstructured, something real, she slipped away. Disguised in faded jeans, a soft cashmere sweater, and a baseball cap pulled low over her razor-sharp bob, she went incognito to a small independent gallery in Chelsea. She was no one, just a woman, seeking something she couldn't define. The gallery was quiet, steeped in the scent of linseed oil and turpentine. The walls held works that were raw and visceral. They pulsed with emotion, some fractured, some fierce. She found herself magnetized to one particular collection. Large, abstract canvases swirling in black, white, and a vibrant electric blue. The chaos was controlled, the emotion undeniable. They echoed the storm she kept caged inside. Powerful, aren't they? The voice was low, warm, and resonant, startling in the silence. She turned. A man stood beside her, tall, his eyes thoughtful and kind, his hands still faintly stained with paint. He wore a paint-splattered t-shirt and a pair of jeans that had seen better days. His eyes were fixed on the canvases, not her, carrying a look of quiet intensity, a deep understanding. "There, honest," Lily said softly, the word surprising even her. "That's him," the man replied, nodding toward an artist in the corner animatedly chatting with a potential buyer. "Liam O'Connell. He paints like he's clawing his way out of a locked room. Pure passion, pure fire." Finally he turned toward her. A warm, easy smile broke across his face, crinkling the corners of his kind eyes. "I'm the owner. Daniel Murphy." Caught off guard, Lily hesitated, then offered simply, "Ellie." For the next hour, Daniel walked her through the gallery, weaving stories around the art, not with pretension or jargon, but with genuine, heartfelt insight. He spoke of emotions, not trends, of brushstrokes, not appraisals. He didn't ask about her career. He didn't mention status. He didn't care who she was. They just talked. And somewhere deep inside, a forgotten part of her stirred. It was the Harvard art history student. The girl who once saw the world in color, not contracts. Who marveled at beauty instead of profit margins. She found herself returning to the gallery often in the weeks that followed. With Daniel, conversation flowed from art to music, books to life's absurdities in the city. With him, she wasn't a titan of industry, she was just Ellie, a woman who loved paintings and had shadows behind her smile. And he never pried. He simply was, a calm, grounding presence in the chaos of her new life. Elsewhere, an unexpected dynamic was also taking shape. Kaido Tanaka, her high-profile business partner, was nothing like the media's cold, calculating caricature. In private, she discovered someone wry, deeply intelligent, and surprisingly perceptive. One evening, during a late-night strategy session in the boardroom atop Moreau Tower, they were finalizing final merger terms when he looked up from his tablet, peering at her over the rim of his teacup. "You've enjoyed this," he said calmly, voice low and unwavering. "Crushing Langford, destroying your ex-husband." Lily's spine stiffened. It was a necessary strategic move. Kaido gave a faint, almost amused smile. "Of course. But revenge is a fire, Miss Moreau. One that consumes the hand that feeds it." He set his cup down gently. "It will keep you warm for a time, but in the end, it leaves you with nothing but ashes." He paused. "Charles Langford is a relic. He'll fall whether you strike or not." "Your ex-husband is an insignificant parasite," Kaido said flatly. "He's not worthy of the energy you're spending on him." He looked up, eyes sharp. "This company, our company, is worth it. The future we're building, that's where your energy belongs." His words struck something deep inside Lily. He wasn't judging her. He wasn't patronizing her. He was challenging her. Kaido didn't see her as a tool for vengeance. He saw her as a visionary, as a leader, and he was calling her to rise above the past. He was the first person in her reawakened world to speak not of revenge, but of what comes next. "What are you suggesting?" she asked, her voice quieter, steadier. "I'm suggesting we stop reacting," he replied. His tone sharpened. "Let's go on the offensive, but not against people, against complacency." His eyes gleamed. "Let's invest everything into the sustainable energy division. Let's build something revolutionary, something that changes the world, not just settles old grudges." He leaned in slightly. That would be a victory worthy of a Moreau and a Tanaka. It was a turning point. Kaido's challenge, paired with the human connection she'd found in Daniel, the unassuming gallery owner with paint on his fingers and empathy in his voice, began to shift Lily's focus. For months, rage had been her compass. It burned brightly, lighting her path out of ruin, but it also consumed everything in its path. She had wielded it like a sword, sharp and unforgiving. But Kaido's words pierced through that fire, not to extinguish it, but to offer a new direction, a purpose greater than retaliation. The fury that had fueled her ascent began to cool. In its place, a new, deeper ambition started to grow. She had shown the world she could tear it down. Now, for the first time, she wondered, could she build something better? The war with Adrian and the Langfords was over, but the battle for herself, for the woman she could still become, was only just beginning. And for the first time in years, she didn't feel alone in the fight. Kaido's faith in her wasn't born of obligation or history. It was forged from respect, the kind earned not through lineage, but through fire. And Daniel reminded her that tenderness could still exist in the ruins. Her allies weren't power brokers or legacy billionaires. They were found in quiet galleries and across midnight boardroom tables. People who didn't just see her past, but saw her future. Adrian Hawthorne's descent was swift and merciless. Fired from Langford Capital, he became untouchable in finance, toxic, radioactive. His extravagant lifestyle crumbled. After a bitter, very public annulment from Genevieve, one so total it required a legal name change to sever ties, he was left broken and disgraced. He moved into a dingy apartment in Queens. From there, his ambition curdled into something darker, a festering obsession. In the twisted theater of his mind, Lily owed him. He convinced himself she would eventually see him, as the spark that awakened her. He started to harass her. Pathetic emails. Voicemails that swung between pleading and venom, all intercepted by Malcolm's team and catalogued for legal protection. But when silence greeted his every message, his desperation took a dangerous turn. He started following her. Then, one evening, he bypassed a secondary layer of security, lurking near the private elevator exit of the Moreau Tower. She stepped out with Kaido Tanaka beside her. "Lily," he called, ragged and out of breath. His clothes were wrinkled, his hair unkempt, his eyes wild. She stared at the hollow shell of the man she had once married. "Adrian," Lily said, her voice cold, devoid of even pity. "You need to stop this. Stop this," he barked, laughing manically. "I'm just getting started." You think you can ruin me and walk away? You think you can play queen and forget where you came from?" He stepped closer, his breath ragged. "I know the real you. The scared little girl hiding behind silk and glass. This isn't you." Kaido stepped forward, calm but firm. "I think it's time you left." Adrian's eyes snapped to him, seething. "And who the hell are you? Her new pet?" Lily didn't even blink. Her voice sliced through the air like steel. "He's my partner, Adrian, something you never were." She turned her back on him and walked away, not once looking back. The very public dismissal broke something inside Adrian. If he couldn't have her, he would destroy her. Within days, a sordid, fabricated exposé hit the stands. Spearheaded by scandalmonger Marco Finch, it painted Lily as a manipulative, unstable heiress who had trapped a loving husband by hiding her billions. The article dripped with warped, intimate details meant to lend it an air of authenticity. As if on cue, Charles Langford, still burning for revenge, fed a cascade of damaging rumors to the financial press. Stories questioned Lily's stability, her competence, her very right to lead a multinational empire. The dual-pronged assault worked like a virus. Whispers spread across Wall Street. Morrow Holdings' stock wavered, and the phrase "mentally unfit" started slithering through trading rooms and newsrooms alike. Lily was in a strategy meeting with Malcolm and Kaido when the article hit. Malcolm was livid, already drafting a multi-billion-dollar defamation lawsuit. But Lily? Unnervingly calm. She read the article, every twisted line, every lie. Her expression hardened, not in rage but in terrifying clarity. Adrian had taken their most private, vulnerable moments and weaponized them. He had turned love into pathology. "Don't sue them," she said, voice cold and sharp. "Lily," Malcolm said, aghast, "we must. This can't." "No." She looked up, her eyes glowing with a dangerous light. "A lawsuit is a battle." Her voice sharpened. "But he's declared war. And in a war," she turned to Kaido, her lips curling into a cold, almost feral smile, "you don't file paperwork. You demand unconditional surrender. He wants to control the story by exposing our past?" she added, a blade in her tone. "He forgot something." Her smile widened. "Ice and fire. I know all of his secrets too, and unlike him, I have the receipts." The time for restraint was over. They had mistaken her silence for weakness. Now they would see what real power looked like. Lily's counterstrike wasn't loud. It wasn't messy. It was surgical. What followed was not a single cataclysm, but a symphony of devastation, unleashed quietly and executed perfectly. She gave the full green light to Morrow Holdings' most feared departments, its elite intelligence and legal arms. The tools Malcolm had kept sharp were finally unsheathed. Their first target was Marco Finch and his gossip rag. Within days, Morrow Holdings' investigative team had unearthed decades of ethical violations, bribery, and suppressed criminal behavior tied to Finch's tabloid empire. Malcolm didn't file a lawsuit. He handed the entire meticulously documented case to the district attorney. Finch was arrested within 72 hours. The defamatory story about Lily? Publicly debunked. Then came Charles Langford. While he had been busy peddling rumors about Lily's mental fitness, her team had been conducting a forensic autopsy of Langford Capital's entire operation. The findings? Devastating. A trail of insider trading, fraud, coercion. The kind of crimes that don't get swept under rugs. They set fire to legacies. Malcolm Flynn arranged a private meeting with Langford Capital's board. Charles was not invited. There, he laid out every page of evidence. And then he delivered the final blow. Morrow Holdings had quietly acquired controlling interest in Langford's debt. The message was brutally clear. Either Charles Langford resigned immediately, or the information would go public, and the Langford dynasty would evaporate in under 24 hours. The board didn't hesitate. They issued a statement that Charles Langford was stepping down due to health concerns. The empire he'd tried to defend by attacking Lily, gone. But the final, most brutal strike? That was reserved for Adrian. It would be public. It would be irreversible. And it would be broadcast live. Lily agreed to a rare, televised primetime interview with Sarah Jensen, an icon in journalism known for cutting through spin like a scalpel. She walked onto the stage in a sleek, simple white dress. Elegant, unbothered, a woman with nothing to hide. The first half of the interview was business. Her vision for Morrow Tanaka Industries, global sustainability, reshaping corporate responsibility. Then Sarah leaned in. "Miss Morrow, I have to ask, Your ex-husband Adrian Hawthorne has made some very public, very serious accusations about you. What is your response?" Lily didn't hesitate. She looked straight into the camera, her voice steady, her expression one of quiet sorrow. "He has," she said. "Adrian and I were married for 7 years. At his request, I lived apart from my family's wealth. I did it because I loved him." She paused. The version of our story that he told was cruel, a distortion, but what he left out was why our marriage ended. She reached beneath the chair and produced a folder. Inside was a sworn affidavit detailing Adrian's year-long affair with Genevieve Langford. She then presented a series of emails between Adrian and Charles Langford, discussing a plan to replace his broke wife with a position of power and prestige within the Langford empire. "He didn't just leave me," Lily said softly, each word like a scalpel. "He sold me." The control room was frozen, utter silence. But Lily wasn't finished. "Mr. Hawthorne has accused me of ruining his life," she said, turning back toward the camera. "The truth is, he was never the man he pretended to be." She slid a stack of old credit card statements across the interview table. "These show thousands of dollars spent on luxury items, designer suits, fine dining, while he told me we couldn't afford to fix a leak in our roof." She held up one final document. "And this is his Harvard application, where he falsely claimed to be an orphan. Long before he ever met me, Adrian Hawthorne's entire life was built on a lie." Her voice softened, but her eyes burned with clarity. "I didn't destroy that man. I simply held up a mirror. My only mistake was loving someone who never knew how to love anyone but himself." She paused. "I've paid dearly for that mistake. And now, so has he." There was no triumph in her tone. Only truth. A truth stripped bare of theatrics or fury, just the calm weight of a woman no longer hiding, no longer pleading for understanding. She had carried the shame, the silence, the weight of his betrayal alone for too long. But now she was choosing to lay it down. And by doing so, she reclaimed something greater than power, her voice. Lily ended the interview by announcing the launch of the Moreau Foundation, a $2 billion initiative to support survivors of emotional and financial abuse. In his cramped apartment in Queens, Adrian watched the broadcast with hollow eyes. She hadn't just ended him, she had erased him. The reckoning was absolute and final. He wasn't even a memory now, just a lesson, cauterized into history. The world, once skeptical, now saw Lily Moreau as a symbol of resilience. Moreau Tanaka Industries' stock soared. Adrian vanished, reduced to a ghost of failed ambition, rumored to be working a dead-end job in the Midwest. For the first time in years, Lily's life was entirely her own. The rage that once fueled her was gone. In its place was peace. The empire she once ran out of obligation had become a platform for creation. Under her and Kaido Tanaka's leadership, Moreau Tanaka became a global force in sustainable innovation and tech. Her work became her legacy. Not just to silence doubters, but to build a better world. She and Kaido remained close partners, bound not by romance but mutual respect and vision. Yet beyond the glass towers and billion-dollar mergers, Lily found something even rarer. Joy. She kept returning to Daniel Murphy's art gallery. Still just Ellie. To him, she wasn't a titan, she was a thoughtful woman with a love for color and canvas. He didn't ask for more, and she never offered. Until one crisp autumn afternoon, nearly a year after her return, they were walking through Central Park. "You seem lighter," Daniel observed gently. Lily smiled. "I feel lighter." She paused. "There's something I need to tell you." She told him everything. The Moreau name, the secret life, the betrayal, the revenge, and the rebirth. Daniel said nothing at first, just listened, fully, intently. When she finished, a long silence lingered. Then he smiled. "So?" He looked at her. "Does this mean I have to start calling you Miss Moreau?" Lily laughed, a sound filled with lightness and grace. "I'd prefer Lily." "Well then, Lily." He offered her his arm. She took it, and they walked on. He grinned, eyes sparkling with mischief. "It's a pleasure to finally meet you, Lily," he said, his voice warm. "Now, are you going to finish that coffee, or are you planning to use your billions to buy out the whole cart?" In that moment, standing in the middle of the city she now commanded, Lily felt something she hadn't in a long, long time. Completion. She had faced the ultimate betrayal. And not only survived, she had emerged whole, stronger, wiser. The ghosts of heartbreak no longer haunted her steps. They had become the stones in the path she paved herself. each one a marker of resilience, surrounded by people who truly saw her. Kaito, who respected her vision. Daniel, who cherished her soul. Not for her legacy, not for her empire, but simply for the woman she was. She had lost a fantasy built on lies, but gained something far greater. A life of truth. A legacy of her own making. A life not inherited, not borrowed, but earned, choice by choice, scar by scar. The hidden heiress was gone. In her place stood a woman forged by fire, standing in the light, master of her future, infinite in power, limitless in scope. He thought he left her with nothing. But Lily Moreau's transformation, from discarded wife to commanding titan, wasn't just a comeback. It was a complete rewrite of the rules. Her journey is a living testament to the unbreakable spirit of a woman betrayed. She didn't get even. She built an empire. She showed the world that no past, no betrayal, no heartbreak defines your future. You do. She took the shards of pain and crafted a crown. So the story is over. Our wonderful friends, are you still here at this hour? If you are, then something in Lily's journey has touched your heart too. Maybe it's because you've been there. Betrayed, overlooked, dismissed. Maybe you've had to rebuild yourself in silence, in secret. But here's the truth Lily teaches us. Your story doesn't end in the rubble. It begins when you choose to rise from it. Lily didn't just survive heartbreak, she turned it into power. She didn't settle scores, she rewrote the narrative. What if the pain you're feeling right now is just a prelude to your transformation? What if everything you thought broke you was actually shaping the strongest version of you? In the words of Maya Angelou, I can be changed by what happens to me, but I refuse to be reduced by it. That's what Lily did, and that's what you can do too. You are not what they did to you. You are what you choose to become. So let this be your reminder. No betrayal, no heartbreak, no past gets to decide your worth or your future. You do. If Lily's story moved you, if it made you feel seen, strong, or simply less alone, please like this video, share it with someone who might need it, and subscribe to our channel for more powerful stories that don't just entertain, they heal. We're building a space here for stories that speak to the heart, and you, friend, are a part of it now. Thank you for staying, for feeling, for believing. Now go build your empire. With love and power, always.